Welcome to the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's guest is a colleague of mine through Vistage who has become a friend, Kevin Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Ross. It's a pleasure to be here.
Kevin, how was the drive over from Perry County, Central PA, to Lebanon?
It's typically a very easy drive. There was a lot of construction today and a lot of slow drivers, but we got here. So, Kevin, you have been a part of Vistage for quite some time. I have.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with Vistage, the beginnings of that journey, and what other organizations you may have joined along the way?
Yeah, I joined Vistage really out of a sense of obligation to John Dame at the time. I had been a junior partner in a retained search firm that had failed when the economy tanked in 2008. And I actually, being in Perry County, I took a job back in Phoenixville, so outside of Philadelphia. But I committed to John. He was starting a new group, and I committed to John because when I was in my transition, he freely gave me some advice. So I said, when you're starting a group, let me know. I'll join. So I joined on my own nickel. My boss at the time objected, and I said, well, you're not paying for it, and I can take one day a month to do this. And I did that, and I continued to grow through Vistage over the next 4 years. My Vistage group, my group of advisors, beat me up every month, said, why are you working for somebody else?
Interesting. So you were currently paying your way as working for somebody else.
Working for somebody else. And as a result of my Vistage experience, I launched the Cnesta Group.
That's wild. So you had known the Vistage chair. For those of you that aren't familiar with Vistage, the chair is like the organizer, the facilitator of the meeting, the person who kind of runs the show and helps everyone else that's a member to have a productive use of time. You had known that person prior to him starting in Vistage World? Is that how it worked?
No, he was a pretty well-known chair, and he was starting another group. I don't remember exactly how John and I connected, but we connected, and he gave me some very spot-on free advice. As the change management was failing, as I was looking to what's next, I'd created a second company called Transition Partners Group, which still exists today, focuses on career transition. My former partner, he runs that out of North Jersey. Ed McBride is his name, great organization. But I found myself needing to make a change for family reasons, et cetera, and John was there. So I said, once I'm making a relatively steady income, I will be one of your founding members of the Key Group. It's kind of I'm a very loyal guy, so it was kind of, I felt I owed him a payback for the time he had given me.
Yeah, so Cnesta Group is your group now.
Correct.
And that started after Vistage. So you've been a member of Vistage for what, 11 years?
12.
12?
Yeah.
Very cool. What other organizations are you a member of?
Interesting. I'm just finishing my term as the president of the PCLC, which is a literacy council in Perry County, where we help all sorts of people, and we tie with 15 other agencies under one roof. And I've been the president of the board now for just over 4 years. And it's my final meeting was actually last night.
Wild.
I'm staying on the board as the treasurer for another year. I'm vice president of Borough Council in New Bloomfield.
Okay.
So my foray into politics, my first and last, by the way, although it's been a good
No
experience.
more politics for you?
No, but it's been a good experience. We've been able to make a difference with the group I'm working with, very good people.
That's cool.
I've also been on the board of Joint Hands Ministry, and I'm actually one of the founders of the Perry County Chamber of Commerce. And for about 2 years, I served on the board of the Pennsylvania Heritage Foundation.
Tell me about the Pennsylvania Heritage Foundation.
Pennsylvania Heritage Foundation is all about the history of PA, and there's multiple sites across 22, if I recall correctly, including the State Museum in Harrisburg. And it was all about tying together and driving history and supporting Pennsylvania heritage across the state. I'm a history buff, so it made sense.
On the topic of history, what is your favorite time period of American history?
My favorite time period?
To study, or that you're most interested in, or that you think is most interesting? I would ask what's your favorite war, but that would be putting a positive to a negative. So
Well, I'm a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
So the Civil War.
Civil War era.
I've done. One of the things, I have 4 daughters, and one of the things that drives them absolutely insane is anytime we go somewhere and they have those plaques where you have to read, I stop and read every one, which makes me a font of useless knowledge often when we play Trivial Pursuit and things like that. But it is, I just love history in general. You know, I'm a huge fan of ancient history as well.
Abraham Lincoln was one of the better, if not the best, presidents. Top 5, arguably.
I agree. One of the things that when I find myself wanting to move to rash judgment, or if someone rubs me the wrong way, I immediately think of a phrase from Lincoln. And one of the things he said was, I don't like that person very much. I need to get to know them better.
Interesting.
And that has become, in the back of my mind, I would bring that up very often if I found myself in a tenuous situation.
Lincoln was one of the great unifiers.
Agreed.
He was also, you probably know this, an excellent wrestler.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Tall guy.
Tall and lanky, yeah.
So I understand how you got started with Cnesta Group. You were working, the position you were at before did not pay for your Vistage development.
No.
And you had the feedback from Vistage. But as you know, all your peers, all your outside forces, whether that's daughters or significant others or parents, they can tell you what to do, but it's up to you to make the decision. So my question is, what made you jump from being the employee to the owner, making that leap?
I wanted to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Having prior in my earlier career been head of HR for a couple of organizations, I never really liked search firms. And I worked for a couple of search firms. I initially worked for a great organization that asked me to go into recruiting, which was the first foray for me externally. Change management, I started with a partner. It didn't work. So I went to work for a retained search firm back in the Philadelphia area. Great guys that are phenomenal recruiters. But I always wanted to provide a level of service that I was constantly criticized for, that I provided too much service. And I took exception to that. So the Cnesta Group model came out of my desire to do things differently, to focus on the lifetime value of the client, to provide an answer that was beyond just getting a paycheck and running as fast as you can the other way.
Yeah, churn and burn kind of used car sales, opposite of that.
Absolutely. It's more about getting to know the client up front and providing a level of service, not only to come up with that terms that have been used in how, that unicorn or that purple squirrel, that very special person that's going to make a difference for the organization, but staying with that individual so that they can make a difference going forward. So we have coaching, assessments, things like that. It's a very different model.
So you started because you wanted to make a difference, and you felt like you had the intrinsic motivation and desire to do so, and you saw the opportunity.
I saw the opportunity, and I just got tired of the way I saw the industry going. And I wanted to provide a very different approach, where we became not interested in being a vendor, but where we partner with our clients, and where every candidate, actually being, very practical, every candidate is a potential future client as well. So making the experience better for them was important. It also, by making the candidate experience better, it is a better reflection on my client, because I'm their extension in the marketplace.
So not looking at it just solely as having in terms of fiduciary responsibility for some companies with just the business. You do have that, but you also take that same level of care to the end consumer, which would be the candidate.
Correct. Because we are out of the gate, the first representatives of that company's culture and that leadership. And we take a lot of time up front to get to understand their culture, to understand the leaders and what their expectations are, and what is it going to take to be successful in that role. We don't present a lot of candidates. We go through a very arduous screening process where Most of the time, in the 10 years we've been in business, it's 3 to 5 candidates at most.
Mm-hmm.
We have done more than 10 searches on 2 candidates.
Wow. So the long-term relationship really does stand true by that example.
Yeah.
One quote that I hear repeatedly when it comes to HR change management people is that businesses should hire slow, fire fast. And I find with a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, yeah, that sounds great. How? Because the roof's on fire. Oftentimes, these small to mid-sized businesses, I'm saying probably even up until 50 million, don't have dedicated HR, don't have recruiting function in and of itself. They're just, oh, we got an applicant? Great. When can you start? I feel like from what I've heard from you today that you are the ability for some of these companies so that they can hire slow, fire fast, because you take the time and do the legwork that they are either unable to do or don't have the time to do or not willing to do. And you provide such a service that they have the opportunity to hire slow, fire fast. What do you think about that phrase, and have you heard that term before?
I've heard the term hire slow and fire fast quite often.
Yeah.
And the caveat I would do is I would change it. So if you use the right search firm, whether it is the Cnesta Group or another firm, because there are some good firms out there, it's hire smart, fire fast. You know, if you make the investment up front, and going to a search firm is an investment, it's a cost in many respects, especially for small to mid-sized companies. But it is far less a cost than the cost of a bad hire.
Plus, it saves them time, too, because the slow doesn't necessarily matter if you have a pool of vetted candidates, right?
That is correct. And we...
There's time savings that you provide.
There are time savings that we provide, but we can present candidates relatively quickly. And they're vetted, and we present addendums, deep write-ups, copies of the assessments. But we can't control the hiring process. That is actually controlled by the client, and at times they do move slowly because it is a big investment.
Mm-hmm.
But our process gives them a lot of the information they need up front so they can make that decision better and move forward. But I absolutely agree, if you have a bad hire, eliminate them.
We were talking about, I was trying to articulate who I think needs executive search. But in your experience, which clients are the clients that you find recurring that benefit the most from executive search as a service?
We have a unique profile in that just about all of our business is on a repeat or referral basis.
Mm-hmm.
We have done work for companies as low as $2 million in revenue and $12 billion.
Gee whiz.
We just finished work right now for a $10 billion organization in Minnesota and a $40 billion organization in Oklahoma. And at the same token, we also just did 2 C-suite level searches for a $17 million organization in York.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm finding is that it is better to have that more of that, for want of a better term, that intimate discussion with the CEO, with the business owner. You know, or at times even the head of HR, depending on the smaller to mid-sized companies, because we can provide a greater impact for a longer term by providing the right candidate with the right follow-up coaching we provide that delivers incredible sustained results for that organization.
So it's more, it's not limited by revenue or size of company. It's more the specific kind of candidate, not only that they're looking for, but it's also the specific owner. Like if there's a culture fit between, you know, you and the owner where you guys see eye to eye and you can understand their goals. It doesn't have to be owner, CEO, HR, like you said. So it's more who, not what the business is all about.
Absolutely. If there are many cases where smaller companies have come to us and they've wanted to engage in retained search, and I've taken them through our conversations, and I've actually talked them out of it.
Interesting.
Because I didn't feel that based on where the company was, what their finances look like, that they would be happy with the investment, nor were they prepared to make the investment. And in many cases, they hadn't exhausted other options. So part of, can't help it, maybe it doesn't make me the best businessman, but part of my goal is to help that individual regardless. So we have convinced them not to do retained search at this time, given them ideas on other options they should exercise first. And when those options, or if those options did not occur, then we signed a retained search contract with them. On the other side is companies that absolutely are ready to go to retained search. We don't sign an agreement with them and say, okay, let's go, until we sit down with the principals in the organization, the hiring manager, the senior execs, in some cases the owner, and make sure that the owner is comfortable with us, and frankly, we're comfortable with them, because that actually gives us foresight into the organization and gives us an immediate understanding of the culture and what the candidates are going to experience when they go into interview. So many firms will sign an agreement and move. We will not sign a search agreement until we spend time with the company and understand the culture.
One quote you stated, and I'm not sure if you're aware of how impactful it was, but you stated, turning away business and saying, my solution isn't the right solution for your needs at this time.
Right.
Puts you in the seat, how I define it, of more of a trusted advisor.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to grow the world's largest executive search firm so that you can have to hire all these recruiters to be underneath you. You're trying to build an executive search firm that is of the utmost integrity and service to client and highest, how do I want to perfectly describe this, but of the highest value insofar as you'll let, quote unquote, leave money on the table for the long game of preserving the relationships and the reputation that you built.
Absolutely. In fact, the name Cnesta comes from the Celtic value of integrity. That's why we chose it.
Interesting.
So if we're going to make the effort of naming the company, which is a very difficult word to spell because it's Irish, people always convince.
Fitzpatrick sounds a little Irish.
Just a little bit.
1-1 relationship there.
Just a little bit. 100% actually, according to 23andMe. Very boring DNA results. But Cnesta, when we chose it, it was done on that basis. It is from the Celtic value of integrity, and we feel that that's very important to carry that forward in the process.
When you got started doing executive search with the time machine, if you could go back in time and you would say, look, this is how I perceive executive search before you started Cnesta Group and went on this mission to make the difference and change it. How has it changed? How has it changed when you started doing executive search 20 years ago? How has it changed when you started Cnesta Group 10 years ago? In 2024, what's the outlook? What's the difference?
Search has continued to evolve. The expectations continue to change. Speed to hire expectations have changed. The economy has had a significant impact, the ups and downs, on companies' ability to commit to making the investment to get great talent. 2024, I think we're looking at, there's some uncertainty with the election. This is a crazy year from an election perspective. The introduction of generative AI is impacting, because I don't think anyone truly understands what that impact on talent is going to look like. And that is going to continue to change and evolve. So whether it's our firm or another firm, we need to continue to change and evolve to be prepared to address that for our clients moving forward. Like any other year, search is peaks and valleys. Sometimes we have more work than we should. Other times we're looking to bring work into the organization. But in 2024, there's been a degree of uncertainty. We've had a very good year so far, and I think it's going to come out to be a good year for us as we look at what's in our pipeline. But the expectations are different. There's a degree of caution and uncertainty that some people are looking at. As an example, we're dealing with a potential client. They've made a bad hire twice, and yet they are a little reticent on hiring us, even though we've had long discussions about it, because it's an investment. And I tried to say, you know what? If you're not ready, let's talk it through, as I mentioned earlier in this discussion. However, let's talk about what the cost of the bad hire really looks like.
Sure.
Especially as the market is changing, the economy is changing. And frankly, roughly 70% of the available people out there right now are millennials and Gen Z. And they're
70%.
roughly 70%. That's what it's looking at. I mean, baby boomers, old guys like myself, or Gen Xers, still important in making a difference, but I think it's close to 70% we're looking at Gen Z and millennials, where they have different expectations, different cultural expectations, different work expectations. So it now is becoming somewhat of an art to understand what the different expectations are, frankly, across 4 generations in the workplace.
I'm curious how COVID has impacted executive search, because I know now I can name a handful of business owners that required butts and seats. I don't know what the more proper term would be, but let's just say on-site work environment, and their labor pool was people that were within a 45 to 60-minute drive if they're willing to do so. Same companies after COVID, now it's the entire nation and potentially international. So how has this remote work trend affected what you're doing?
It's affected it a fair amount because, believe it or not, there are individuals that tell me 30 minutes is too far to drive.
No way.
Honest to God. And 30 minutes is too far. And I'm a Philly kid. So
You'd be driving from
10
Perry
miles.
County to Philly.
I mean, when I lived outside of Philadelphia, I mean, it could take you 30 minutes to drive 10 miles, because of the traffic and, the Schuylkill Expressway. But what I'm finding is that expectations are different. And companies need to find a balance between what are policies or procedures, I want the butts in the seats, if I can use your term, versus what's the sustainable long-term benefit for the business.
Right.
Not all functions need to be in the office every day. So providing that flexibility is addressing some of the needs of the changing population out there, and is going to allow you to eventually, as a company, get things more into the direction you want because you provided flexibility. And I think you're maintaining not only your current culture, but building a new culture going forward.
I wanted to ask a question, follow up on your statement around doing executive search for 4 generations.
Yeah.
How would you best describe the differences in labor between Gen Z and baby boomer? From obviously Gen Z was in the labor force 20 years ago,
Right.
but how would you look at, those 2 demographics in terms of whether it's positions or roles or expectations? I think they're very different demographics.
They're very different demographics. Baby boomers and Gen Xers are more inclined to not have an issue going into the office, or more inclined to be able to take the longer commute, consider relocation. When we're looking at millennials and Gen Z, we're looking at the first get out of the gate, how do we get flexibility? I want this job, but can I do it more in my terms? Do I have to relocate? Do I have to be in the office every day? Can I do it remotely 100%? And in some cases, with the advent of the gig economy over the last 7 to 10 years in particular, they can apply their skills and have absolute flexibility to work on their own terms, at their own price point, and deliver what they want and present life a little differently. I'm a baby boomer.
Sure.
My hairline gives that away right away. But for us, it was, you go to work, you take care of your family, you get caught on that constant wheel.
Interesting.
You spin and you spin and you spin, and work-life balance was not an immediate consideration. It was all about taking care of your family.
So would you say the value difference could be maybe flexibility and freedom for the Gen Z younger versus like stability? And
Yes.
Stability would be the word I'm thinking of.
I think flexibility is more important. Stability is still important, but it's not the primary driver. I found, especially being the father of 4 girls, I can always get another job.
Interesting.
But you can't always get another life.
Sure.
If I have to look back as a baby boomer, I traveled all over the world. I had corporate roles, and there's some things I missed that I wish I could get back.
Interesting.
So I don't know if there's any one right answer across the 4 generations in the marketplace right now. But I do think that each generation brings something special, a unique set of skills, a unique set of expectations. And if we can open our eyes and embrace that and bring it all together and make it more inclusive, we can really drive better balance for our employees, better balance for the company. When I say balance for the company, I mean balancing culture and top line and bottom line, and really drive greater sustainable success.
So I have two questions. I'm going to do my best to make them distinct and unique. First question, we talked about general economic trends and how they affect what we do with executive search. How does the supply and demand curve? So I know that there was a period of time where the demand for qualified labor exceeded the supply. There just wasn't enough people willing to take new positions at a certain point. And from the sources I've read and heard about, we're almost at a labor surplus with recent, like especially in tech sector with layoffs. So does that influence how your executive search function works? Like, is there a better or worse time, or is this a different time?
It's just different.
Yeah.
What we need to do in the search business is we need to adapt as the economies adapt, as the candidates adapt, and as the expectations of the clients adapt. If we stay stagnant, we're not going to be successful, and we're not going to provide the right talent to make a difference for the organization. I don't know if that's answering your question.
Yeah, there's no better or worse necessarily. There's just
different
expectations.
And you just need to understand that difference. That's why it's important to spend time up front with the client.
Mm-hmm.
So you understand, what's their appetite for change? What's their appetite for something different? And in some cases, we just recently did it with a local firm where I said, this isn't what you told us to go after, but based on our understanding of your culture, your organization, and what your plans are, this is what we really think you need, so I need you to trust us.
It comes back to being a trusted advisor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my next question then, I think I make this quite unique, is if I'm a candidate looking to break into a different market, or if I'm looking to maybe not just take a horizontal, but I want to take a vertical jump, what could I do in today's economy to stand out and increase my chances, at least in from your executive search lens, not necessarily to get hired, but how can people position themselves for, maybe something that on paper they're not the right fit or most obvious fit? What can people do to stand out?
I honestly feel that part of the biggest challenge for people that are looking to make a career change, to call it that for want of a better term, that you're mentioning, is they feel they can put a resume together, get out there, put the right words in there, keywords, and try and get some notice. And the reality is they sometimes present as a mile wide and an inch deep.
Interesting.
By doing that. What I really think they need to do is to get in touch with what we call their personal product. Understanding, that's why we use the assessments we use. Understanding what their striving instincts or their cognitive mind are, which are the innate strengths that we're all born with. That does not change. But then also getting involved with what are their behaviors, what are their values, what is their emotional intelligence, and spending the time to invest in who they are and what it is that can make them unique. And there are many skills that we all bring to the table that are not industry or market vertical specific. But you can take on another role that is of interest, but it is your job as an individual to understand the personal product that you are, the value that you bring, and how can you sell it. But then also not only sell it, by back it up, by making the investment in yourself so that you can make that difference, not only for yourself, but for your family moving forward.
So in other words, so to speak, it's teaching people how to niche down as opposed to the shotgun or you said the mile wide and inch deep approach.
Right,
so
exactly.
How do you get a deeper understanding of who you are, what you're looking for, and what you're looking for can help to be found when you know who you are and what you want to offer, what you can offer.
Exactly, and we have put some proprietary tools together to do that, some of which are just on our website. and anyone can access them.
Mm-hmm.
And we have others as well that we're finalizing now that will help do that. And I do encourage, and I wouldn't have said this 30 years ago, but I do encourage the use of assessments.
Yeah.
You know, we use the Colby Index, which is the only assessment that focuses on our cognitive mind, our striving instincts. We use one of the 200-odd versions of DISC out there. We use an emotional intelligence version as well. And I think they're all important to give you that insight and perspective, but it's not just a matter of taking the assessment. It's leveraging, spending the time to understand who you really are. Because you owe it to yourself, because you don't want to make a bad decision. An employer doesn't want to make a bad hiring choice. So if you have a better understanding of your product, you're in a better position to not only interview far more effectively, but taking a job and bringing positive affectivity to that role, as well as to your own career and your long-term aspirations. And a lot of people, and I can say myself included, earlier in my career, did not take the time to go through that. And that's becoming very, very critical now.
Self-awareness matters more now than ever.
Yes.
I'm going to flip the question. Let's say that there's a hypothetical candidate out there who may have experience, let's just say like Goldman Sachs and an MBA and a wonderful track record and adored by his peers, but for some reason or another, this candidate's willing to make a jump. So there's high demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say 3 companies, Kevin, reach out to you and they have interest in potentially this one candidate. How can companies stand out in a labor market where there may be, only so few candidates that would be the right fit for them, but more companies wanting that candidate than before?
By being genuine,
Mm-hmm.
by being open, by not being afraid to expose what the need is and why, and what the expectations are in the short and long term, as well as also laying out that that company is committed not only to vertical growth for candidates, but also horizontal development for candidates. And horizontal development is more of, instead of just filling the cup, get a bigger glass.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So you provide those opportunities, because that horizontal development, which a lot of companies do not invest in when looking at workforce planning, is actually critical to developing long-term sustainable talent within an organization.
Interesting. So they can stand out, to paraphrase, in other words, with being genuine, being
Mm-hmm.
open and honest, and also looking into how they can invest with that highly sought after hire's career, not just, vertical development, but if they want to stick in that role, how can we make that role more meaningful and impactful for the organization and them?
And it's got to be truthful,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of smart people out there.
Yeah.
And forgive my language, but the BS sniffer's pretty good.
Yeah.
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 And so you've got to make sure, you've got to be genuine and tell the truth, because obviously if you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could be genuine and lay it out there and say, this is our expectation for the organization, it's great. Now, if it doesn't work, the best ambassadors for many organizations are employees that have left but had a good experience.
That's a really good point. So I love asking this question, and I call it the time machine question. Not saying that you have regrets in your life and not saying that you would change the course, but the question revolves around, if you could go back in time to when you were just, let's say, a senior in high school,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what you know now about life and how important career is in it, what advice would you give yourself?
Follow my heart. I probably should have been a teacher. But rather than follow my heart, at that time, I paid my own way through college. And my decision to go to college was, what college accepted me with the lowest price point?
Interesting.
And then when I got to college and I worked full-time going through college, it was going through the constant churn, getting through college, competing in a sport at the time, working full-time, trying to get grades that would be an acceptable GPA when I graduated. And then how could I leverage that into a career? But I never really took the time to figure out, what is it that I really want to do? And now I would say, before you make the investment And college may or may not be the right answer because it's not for everybody. Think about what is it that you really want to do. If you want to make a difference for you and for the world around you, how do you think you can do it? And who's going to be important to help you get there? And if that who means college professors and going to college, then by all means do it. If I had to look back, I would say, yes, I would have been a teacher.
Interesting.
And I would have not have focused on let's make the money, let's make the difference. And when I graduated from college at 21, I wasn't mature enough to do that.
At that point, you thought the most important thing was making the money?
Get a job. You know, when I graduated, I did the 4.5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
By design, my last semester was a full-time internship, unpaid. So I waited tables at night, worked in an HR department during the day, had no pay, but I got 18 credits, had to do a paper, etc. But I did that because I wanted to work hard enough that they would give me a job, which they did. But when I graduated from college in December of 1981, I'm giving my age away there, there were 300 people in my graduating class. Only 13 of us had a job.
What?
Yeah.
In 81, that was the labor market.
Only 13 of us had a job in my graduating class. So I graduated on Saturday, and I went to work on Monday. And where I worked, they didn't have the money for headcount. So my first job out of college was as a consultant on a 1099 basis, and they moved me to W-2 3 months later.
Wild.
And that came out of my internship. So I did that by design. I was smart enough to figure that out. But it was all about go to school, get a job, and then worry about things later. And that's changed. And the advice, we try to give our daughters and moving forward is think about what is it that you really want to do and make the investment there. And I did not have that opportunity. So follow your heart would be my best answer right now.
I love the quote, when you know your why, you can overcome almost any how.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
However, to overcome that how, you're going to have to rely on a lot of who.
Yeah. Can't do it alone.
You cannot do it alone.
Interesting. So with that being said, Kevin, for those who are listening that are either, in the labor force and looking to make a move, maybe they have gotten laid off recently, maybe they just are not happy with where they're currently at, maybe they want to take a step in a vertical direction and make their life better through a different position. Or if you're a business owner out there who just can't seem to find the talent that they desperately need, how can people connect with you, and what does that look like?
Oh, they can connect with us via LinkedIn. They can connect with us via the website.
CnestaGroup.com.
So that's www.cnestagroup.com. They connect to us that way. That comes right to my email. Or if anyone wants to just call and have a chat and discussion, we do that literally every day.
Oh, yeah.
There is not a week that goes by that I am not on the phone with someone who is looking at career transition. And we have a whole career transition model that we get paid for. But all those phone calls, it doesn't cost anything because it's the right thing to do.
Right on, man. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. And for everyone listening, if you found value in the show and you want to be a guest, reach out. And if it was worth sharing, please share the show with a friend. That's how it grows. I don't do any ads. For now, Thunderstock Show out.